What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they head into the offseason. Plenty of news, plenty of questions. We have a long time and a lot of episodes left to dive into each and everything that the Pittsburgh Steelers have to fix, correct, and answer before training camp and OTAs start in the summer and in the spring. But for right now, there were two big ones, two giant questions that the Pittsburgh Steelers had walking out of locker room cleanout day yesterday and into the offseason. The first one was the speculation of Mike Tomlin, who will be the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024. Is he going to take some time off? Is he considering being traded elsewhere to another team? Well, we finally got an answer to that one. Meanwhile, the quarterback is obviously number 2 on that list, and one ESPN analyst has 3 teams the Pittsburgh Steelers must call to try and correct it before the offseason is over. And then we were there yesterday, locker room clean out, spoke to as many guys as we could, got some news and notes and everything else, and we'll give you our biggest takeaways from the last time we will talk to these players until OTAs. It is a sunny day out there in the Berg. It feels really good to be back on a regular podcast schedule. I won't lie to you, but it's freezing cold. Buffalo has still followed our asses home from our to Pittsburgh, I should say. How you feeling, my friend?
I feel better because I think I know what day it is today.
Yes, I agree.
I think I have like my calendar, settled underneath my feet, and that is a much better feeling than like we got to the stadium. We got to Highmark Stadium in Buffalo on that was Monday. Yeah, Monday. And I don't know, people kept asking us like, "Oh, when did you come up? When are you guys leaving?" And I was like, I think it was like 72 hours ago we came up. I don't know. It feels like a week. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I agree. It is it's very I tried as hard as possible yesterday to kind of just like settle in, get back into like a normal routine. All while I mean you had to cover a game last night. I thoughts and prayers to you all night long. That's all I kept saying. You could ask Jillian. I was just like, man, dude, I hope Steven's like alive and well out there. But I tried as hard as possible to get back into a normal routine while my body was just like slowly deteriorating throughout the night. It was just like, all right, pal, it's 11 o'clock. If you don't go to bed right now, you're not going to make it. It's just not going to happen. But we're here. We're back. It's Wednesday, which is very, very good. We talked to the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room for the last time yesterday. We'll dive into that. We'll start with the biggest news of the day, the biggest news of yesterday, the biggest news of the Pittsburgh Steelers offseason, and that is Mike Tomlin telling the team yesterday that he will come back. This is according to NFL Network's Mike Garofalo, and then Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Jerry Dulac confirmed that. Later in the afternoon, he told the players in their final meeting that the speculation, the rumors of him not coming back or thinking of taking some time off or going elsewhere is unfounded, and that he will return in 2024 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, ending any speculation and, for us, any nonsense reports that have floated around there for the last couple of weeks about him going elsewhere. You heard the news. What were your thoughts when you saw Mike T is coming back in 2024?
Yeah, it's like the first domino to fall of the offseason, really, and the biggest one. It is kind of everything comes off of this, like every other decision that the Pittsburgh Steelers have to make for the rest of the offseason. They all had to wait until until we knew for sure what Mike Tomlin was going to do. And I say, know for sure, because it seems like Mike Tomlin knew what he was going to do for a while and just didn't really want to share that decision with the rest of us, or it seems like the rest of his team. So, he finally did share that news. He shared it in a personal meeting. He kept it kind of in-house and just let it leak out through the media. I mean, I think the reception was kind of lukewarm, and you understand. I mean, it's on the heels of a really bad playoff loss, on the heels of a bad season that seemed real disjointed. But I feel like there should be some optimism, like Mike Tomlin was not the Steelers' biggest problem last year. In fact, I think he was one of the biggest solutions that they had last year. He was one of the guys who, among all of the reasons why they were able to rally towards the end of the season and even get to the playoffs, I think Mike Tomlin is pretty close to the top of the list, if they're not at the top of the list. There are a million teams that, hate to rehash all the same talking points, but, we'll see. Like, they've got a lot of work to do in the offseason, but I think they've got the best coach that they could possibly have right now to go into 2024 with. And I feel like that should be a comforting place for the Steelers, who are entering an offseason with so much other stuff set to change. They've got at least one thing staying consistent.
Yeah, you wrote a real nice piece this morning that I thought convinced me, because I believe in Mike Tomlin. I believe that Mike Tomlin is the coach or the guy for the job here in Pittsburgh, and that he does everything. I also have acknowledged plenty of times that Mike Tomlin does have his flaws, and that those flaws have stood out plenty in the last couple of years with this Pittsburgh Steelers team. And I think guys bringing up like Najee Harris talking about in-house rules, and TJ Watt talking about nobody's practicing hard and all those things. I think when all of that starts to surface, you have issues, and that all gets deflected to the head coach. That being said, it is Mike Tomlin, and there are few, if any, coaches above him. I mean, you got Bill Belichick, but Bill Belichick's up there in age and coming off a couple of really, really bad seasons. And I honestly believe that if Mike Tomlin hit the coaching carousel today, he'd surpass Belichick. And that wouldn't be 5 years ago. It'd be Belichick by a mile. But today, if it happened today, I think Mike Tomlin would be the most wanted coach in the NFL, because teams understand that what you're getting is a guy who's going to lead you to the playoffs. How far he's going to take you, who knows? But everybody should be optimistic that it should be further than where he's taken the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I agree with you. I think that optimism should be here in Pittsburgh as well, at least for right now. You have questions. You have some serious questions. When your first question on your offseason to-do list or checklist or whatever is your head coach coming back? And then your second one is, who is your quarterback going to be? Those are as big as they possibly get. They are not small needs or small issues that the Pittsburgh Steelers have. And to go 10-7 and make the playoffs and really have a shot there at the end to make a comeback, if it wasn't for a couple of bad penalties and some bad tackling, I mean, you're looking at a team that's right there neck and neck with Buffalo. I'm not trying to make an excuse. I'm just trying to say that I don't know how much better it gets than this. And for another year or another 3 years or whatever, the pieces are here to say, okay, look at, another shot. And we're going to get roasted, because that's just what happens is halfway through the season, when we're talking about how Mike Tomlin is an issue and the problem, and everybody's telling us we're crazy. And then at the end of the season, we're trying to defend the guy and everybody's telling us we're crazy. It'll be a constant life cycle. But if you live that constant life cycle, you always end up here. Mike Tomlin's got to take it to the other side. I think that's the only issue, the only concern people should have right now is, in the middle of the season, fans and everybody else are willing to support this guy 110% back against the wall. He will get the job done. At the end of the season, he's got to get it to a point where fans are still like, look at, man, this is my guy. I ride and die with Mike Tomlin. That is the only issue. I think the locker room loves this guy. Like, I think it's crazy yesterday how, like, and I might be taken away from what we're going to talk about later, but I think it's a very important note here, is I think it's crazy how a coach hasn't won a playoff game in 7 years, has dealt with everything that locker room has dealt with. And I have never once heard a player put the blame on Mike Tomlin. Ever once.
Yeah. It's all been kind of self-accountability. I think
yes.
Pat Freiermuth said it. I think even TJ Watt, and I don't know if Cam Hayward said it, but
Cam was as vocal as he could be yesterday, even if he didn't say those exact words.
Right. But they all put it on themselves, the struggles of this team over the course of this year. They're like, we have to execute better. Like, it's not, I mean, even Najee, I felt like he was very careful, intentional to say, look, this isn't about, the changes I'm talking about. I'm not talking about coaches. I'm talking about the players. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about our attitude, the way we execute in and out of games. They wanted to take responsibility for it. They didn't want to put it on Mike Tomlin. And, you mentioned the piece I wrote. I mean, Mike Tomlin didn't fumble twice. He didn't throw a red zone interception. Like,
yep.
There are plenty of things that you can criticize Mike Tomlin for. And like you've said, we've done it. We've done it we've done it pretty often this year throughout the season. Yeah. But he was, I don't know, if he's going to get credit for everything that went wrong this season, then he's also got to get, or if he's going to get blamed for everything that went wrong this season, he's also got to get credit for turning things around and for keeping this group cohesive throughout really all of the, I don't even know what you call it, like the drama, the mess, the like every other kind of, extracurricular storyline that we hated to talk about and hated to hear about. Mike Tomlin kept this locker room together through it all. and kept them pointed in the right direction and got them where they were going. And they lost to a better team, but at the end of the day, like, I don't think you can discredit. You got to walk a fine line, but you can't discredit what he did well, while also just placing the blame for everything that went wrong solely on his shoulders.
Exactly. It is a fine line to walk, but you have to walk it. You have to categorize what is his fault and what is not his fault, and then you can make a conclusion. But at the end of the day, look at legendary coaches prove themselves that they are legendary. Bill Belichick has not coached a good team in a long time, and he is the hottest, maybe the second hottest name on the coaching market right now, because teams know, man, it does not get better than Bill Belichick. That's just what it is. Not every coach is going to go win a Super Bowl every year, and Mike Tomlin's got to start winning playoff games. I fully understand that one, but you have to look at it sometimes and just say the grass isn't greener, and the pieces are in place to make it greener here. So let's try to figure that out.
Right. I think that's a good point. Like, I think the saying is the grass is greener where you water it, and the lawn that Mike Tomlin has been standing under has not been watered very well, I feel like, for the past, three years or something. Like, this is
maybe more than that. Right. You got to remember, this is Omar Khan's. He's had one offseason to do something. And what he's done in that offseason has been impressive. He didn't draft Kenny Pickett. That wasn't his choice. He extended Mitch Trubisky after Kevin Colbert signed Mitch Trubisky. Like, that wasn't his choice. What Omar Khan has done is brought in a first-round right tackle or left tackle, Joey Porter Jr., who's an absolute stud, Nick Herbig, who's an absolute stud, Keanu Benton, who's an absolute stud, like Darnell Washington, who's got plenty going on for him. He's done a lot of good things.
He's drafted at least 3 starters. He brought in one more, at least on the offensive line in free agency. He signed all those inside linebackers that were significant upgrades. Brought in Patrick Peterson to fill the cornerback role, which I feel like he did capably. Let's let Omar cook for a little bit, and then we can see what Mike Tomlin does with, I don't know, a team that doesn't have so many holes in the roster. I think that's the thing. Like, look, we're entering the last year of Mike Tomlin's contract. There's no news about an extension yet. Who knows if that'll come? But Mike Tomlin's got at least one more year to kind of prove something, and maybe we'll draw some different conclusions at the end of the year. But I'm not ready to bury a coach who was working with a roster that not only, like, it was flawed to begin with, and then you added all the injury luck, all the horrible injury luck the Steelers went through this season. So I think I think Mike Tomlin's got plenty of leeway going into this year, and I think he's kind of, I mean, Cameron Hayward said it too. I think he used the word, like, Mike Tomlin has earned the benefit of the doubt a little bit more than what we're giving him.
Yes, I agree. And I think, to stick with the Omar Khan thing, Omar Khan hasn't touched the quarterback market, hasn't done any of it. Maybe he does this offseason, which I think is very significant what you can do there. And a quarterback changes everything for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Guys, we have gear, new merchandise from AST to Muth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. To move on to our second point here, while sticking in that same subject, Dan Orlovsky, ESPN analyst, which I know as soon as I say that name, a lot of people are going to be like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Well, he's got 3 names that the Pittsburgh Steelers should call immediately for a quarterback. And I think all 3 of them, to some degree, make some sense and are worth definitely talking about. Those 3 teams are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Chicago Bears, and the Minnesota Vikings, obviously for Baker Mayfield, for Justin Fields, and or for Kirk Cousins. You hear those 3 names. We have talked about Justin Fields plenty, and I'm going to reiterate a lot of the same things that I've reiterated and will continue to reiterate. Like, this will not, the Justin Fields conversation will not end out of my mouth until Mason Rudolph is the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024, and or one of these other quarterbacks are already on the roster. You hear those three names, you hear those three quarterbacks, you hear Dan Orlovsky say you got to call one of those three. If you're Omar Khan, you think any of the three are realistic. And if you are going to pick of the three, what of the three are you going to pick?
Well, I think the answer to both those questions is the same. I think Justin Fields is the most realistic one, and I think he's the one that I want the most. I think you look at, so if you're kind of ordering it, I feel like I would put Justin Fields up top, like that's your top option. Then I think Kirk Cousins, and then I think Baker Mayfield. And I think both Baker and Kirk are just going to be a little bit too much money for what you're getting. I like Kirk. I like Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins is good, and I think he could do. I think he could do some cool things with Deontay and George Pickens, and even Pat Freiermuth too. But what is his cap hit? Like $45 million. Like
it's got to be up there.
Yeah, like it's a lot of money, and money that I don't think the Steelers can really afford, right now, especially considering that there are some other possible big time upgrades out there. And I think I think it's kind of the same deal with Baker. Just, what was it?
I believe it is 28 and a half next year.
Okay. More reasonable.
Definitely more reasonable. No, it might be voided money. He might be on a 1 year, $35 million deal, and then everything else is
incentives.
No.
Oh, no.
In 2024, Cousins will earn a $28.5 million cap hit, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so then I'm thinking about that a little bit more. I still feel like Fields is the better option, but that's not disqualifying, I feel like, for Kirk Cousins. But by that same vein, like that would eliminate Baker, because Baker's is, I don't know, Baker's a free agent, and I feel like he's gonna have to get paid by someone. Like,
yeah, 100%.
You were saying before we came on that, like, if you're the Bucs, you already have, I mean, especially after that Philly win, you've got Baker's contract like already written up. It just needs his ink on it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly where I stand. Is I'd rather have a quarterback where either I have 1 year of, okay, we'll see what happens, money, which is Justin Fields, 1 year of or an understanding of what I'm going to have to pay them and how crazy it's going to get, which is, okay, cool. Baker's a guy where, for one, isn't he on a 1 year deal? So why are you calling the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Like, you just, hey, could you sign him so that, you could trade him to us? That one's weird to me. And I don't want a guy who has one good season. And what are the terms of good? Like, Baker Mayfield looked good, and he beat an Eagles team that has been struggling. And I get it. Like, I'm a Baker fan. I like Baker Mayfield a lot. I feel like he's the biggest risk of the three. Like, you look at all three of them, you're going, all right, like, Baker could be really good. He could also, like, not be really good. Like, in my opinion, it's kind of simple, like, when it comes to that. And I'll talk about the other two in a second here, but when it comes to Baker, like, and maybe I'm alone here, I think Mason Rudolph and Baker Mayfield are almost on the same level for me right here. Like, I think if I had to pick, I'm just going to re-sign Mason Rudolph and say, well, Mason Rudolph looked really good. And, Baker's looked really good too, but Baker's looked really good, and he's led his team. I don't know what Tampa Bay's record was this year, but it definitely wasn't 10-7, and he definitely didn't face the level of competition that the Pittsburgh Steelers have faced this season. And I just, I'm not saying that Mason's perfect, but if you're going to take a risk, I'm taking a risk on the guy who's here and is proven, and who Deontay and Jalen and George and Pat and everybody else love. Like, that makes a lot more sense to me.
Right.
I'm still going Justin Fields over any of them. But Kirk Cousins, $28.5 million certainly intrigues me. No doubt about it.
Yeah, certainly thinking about Kirk Cousins. The other thing about Baker is he's not going to be throwing to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Like, your level of talent goes down. He's a guy that's injured all the time. Like, and again, I'm a big Baker fan, but let Tampa Bay have Baker if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you have your Baker. Your Baker is Mason Rudolph. Like, just stick with Mason Rudolph at that point.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I feel like the ceiling that the room between Justin Fields right now and his ceiling, I feel like, is much larger than, like, Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield would be, in my opinion, walking into worse situations if they came from their current teams to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, just in terms of, like, the roster around
yes,
them.
I agree. I almost had to think about that one, and then the name Justin Jefferson clicked in my head.
Right. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Hawkinson, a lot of guys.
Yeah.
But like Justin Fields, like this is a significant talent upgrade. Like on the entire offense coming from the Bears to the Steelers. And so I feel like in that vein, there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot more meat on the bone with Justin Fields that you could still kind of pick at and see what you got there. The other two kind of proven commodities, which I guess in one sense is good, but I mean it puts a hard ceiling on their potential. And I feel like Justin Fields, there's just a lot of potential that hasn't been tapped yet. I don't know. I'm a big Justin Fields guy, so I feel like
Justin Fields guy.
I'm a huge Justin Fields guy. So
I just look at if you're going to make I think my understanding is very simple. If you're not going to draft a quarterback, or maybe I guess try to sign one depending on how the free agency market goes, the only quarterback that I'm trading for in the NFL, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's realistic. That's a realistic trade, is Justin Fields. He's the only one I'm thinking about. He's the rest of them, you could come up with this reason or that reason or whatever not to make that move. Justin Fields is the only one that I'm sitting around going, that makes 100% sense. That is 100% worth the risk. That is 100% worth the draft capital. You go get Justin Fields. The rest of them, I'm good. Like, I think you could find other alternatives or take other risks or do whatever you want to do to handle the situation outside. Like Justin Fields, to me, just like you said, like I could look up at my ceiling here, 15 feet above me. It's nowhere near the ceiling that Justin Fields has. Like, the guy could be unreal. He's working with DJ Moore. Before he was working with DJ Moore, he was working with nobody. Like, literally nobody. He hasn't had a strong running game, maybe ever, in his entire career. He's had an awful offensive line. He just got a defense. He's been flipping head coaches nonstop. Like, just think about what Justin Fields could do with Mike Tomlin as his head coach, as a guy who is steady and calm and going to just keep everybody relaxed in the moment. I think it's with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, an offensive line that is missing two pieces. And I get it, they're two crucial pieces, but you could fill those pieces this offseason. And a guy in George Pickens and Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth and Connor Hayward and Calvin Austin. And I mean, that is, just put Justin Fields in the best case, in the best scenario he could possibly be in when comparing the two teams. And the other two, I agree with you. I think it's a step down. And I just think that there's other factors there where, like, don't get me wrong, Kirk Cousins might lead the Steelers to the Super Bowl, but he doesn't excite me enough to go make that move. I don't know how old Justin Fields or how old Kirk Cousins is, but he's got to be in his 30s, right? He's got to be like 33, 34, something like that.
Easily, like, I can look it up.
Yeah, he's up there. 35 years old. So that's a guy that, like, what are you giving up for a 35-year-old Kirk Cousins? A first-round pick, definitely. And is that worth it? Nope. I'm giving up a second and a third for Justin Fields.
Right.
Any day of the week.
The asking price for Justin Fields is so cheap. Like, it's unreal. That's
what I'm giving up for him. And I'm feeling 10 times better about that for a 25-year-old or a 24-year-old or whoever than I am for either one of the other two. Or I'm just sticking with Mason Rudolph, saying, hey, come on back. It is what it is. I don't know what the other free agents are. We'll get into that later, I guess. But for right now, if you had to pick between these three, easy. Would you, let's just say Baker was the only realistic one, because I don't think Kirk's a realistic one. What would you give up for Baker Mayfield? Third round pick?
Oh, I don't know if the Bucs would go for that.
I know. If you're the Steelers, what are you calling and offering?
I'd offer a third. I feel like you got to offer a third and like something else, right? Like
third and Kenny Pickett. You could have Kenny Pickett.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
That's what I'm offering. It sounds good, but I'm not going anything higher than that. Justin Fields, I'm going second and third. Easy. I would consider a first depending on how the situation looks and what else they're willing to give up.
Yeah, I feel like he's worth a first, so I would give a first. But I'm not leading with that because clearly the Bears are prone to getting fleeced.
No, dude. Omar Khan's picking up the phone and going,
Steelers,
hey, Ryan Poole, we'll give you a 5th round pick, and then they'll work their way, and they'll eventually meet at like a second and a third, and it'll work out just fine for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Caleb Williams, I hope you have a great time in Chicago, man. Hope you have a great time in Chicago. But that's the only way I'm going about that. All right, before we head out of here, last thing I want to talk about, Yesterday, locker clean out day. Last time we'll talk to the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room until OTAs. The locker room will look much different by then. Plenty of injuries, plenty of contract expirations, contract extensions. Might have been the last time we saw Mason Rudolph walking around in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room, as crazy as that sounds. We were both there, talked to, I don't know, a few people. I don't want to say it was a successful locker room cleanout day. I've been to some really good ones. I've been to some really bad. I mean, I could still look back. I think the best one I've ever been to was the first one. And that's like, I could still picture Artie Burns shoving stuff into a garbage bag and somebody going up to him and him just being like, man, look it, I'm not going to come back here. And, I wish him all the best, but this just didn't work out. Me being like, all right, sounds good. Thanks, pal.
Perfect.
I could still picture all that good stuff. I've had a Zach Banner interview that I literally just walked up to him and said, like, hey, like, what you got going on this offseason? And he said, take out your phone. And he just started talking. And I was like, all right, that's a great story. Thank you very much. There's been some really good ones yesterday. I would say it was but after the season the Pittsburgh Steelers went through, I don't think anybody really wanted to talk at that point. And to lose the night before, I don't think ever helps the situation. You were there, your first locker clean out day, I believe.
That's right.
What was your biggest takeaway? What were your big takeaways?
Well, it's just an interesting dynamic. It's like no one's supposed to be happy. Everyone's still a little pissed off. But like it's kind of last day of school vibes. Like you want to say bye to your buds. You want to say bye to everyone before you leave. You're reminiscing. You're going through memories. Guys are like Pat Pete's handing out jerseys. Like to all his pals. Like I don't know. It's just a weird mix of like, sadness, but also remembrance and some joy and some laughter and all that, which is just interesting to see. But I think my biggest takeaway was something that we talked about a little bit earlier. And it just felt like talking to guys, the Steelers really feel like they left something on the field up in Buffalo.
Yes.
Like, and for this entire season, really, I think they just felt like, man, we were much better than this, like we were, the sum of our parts didn't, wasn't better than what we all were individually, like that they just like weren't, that there was more to do, that they have like kind of some unfinished business, that they just felt like they didn't live up to their potential this season. And I think that's plain enough for anyone to see, but it's interesting to see guys kind of grapple with that in real time, and like admit that and be like, yeah, we didn't play as well as we could have. We didn't go as far as we could have. We feel like we left something out there. And that was, I think, my big, and that goes back to the Tomlin thing. It felt like the players really, that kind of weighed on them. It was the kind of falling short this season was something that they took personally, that they thought was kind of their fault. And that was just interesting to see, because we spend the entire regular season talking about really two people. And it was Kenny Pickett and Mike Tomlin, and all the rest of the players are like, yeah, we're here too. Like we are a part of this too. We own all the successes and failures. And it wasn't just two guys. It was, 53 plus however many coaches. It just felt like that loss in this season kind of weighed on everyone in a big way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's been a little bit all season of guys like really hammering home, like, look, we got to be on the field. But again, I said this earlier, none of those questions were ever like, oh, how disappointing was, like some of them were, how disappointing was the season? What are the emotions right now? A lot of those questions started with, what are, Mike Tomlin, talking about Mike Tomlin, and guys would immediately just be like, look at we didn't play well. We didn't play well enough. We didn't put it all out there. We left so much at home. Injuries killed us. This was disappointing. We did this wrong. It was just so many guys trying to defend that, like, just like you said, it was them. Like it was bad play in big moments. And I mean, that was cool to see. It stinks to see, but at the same time, like, it shows that the Steelers locker room went through a lot of drama this year. It had a lot of negative headlines. It had a lot of distractions, and all of those things were justified. They were still as competitive as humanly possible, and somewhere along the way, and I don't know if it was the last 3 games, I couldn't tell you, somewhere something clicked where it was like, all right, this is all on us. We've done all this. We've done this to ourselves. Nobody else could take the blame. It is what it is, and we have to live with it. And I think that's a heartbreaker to see, but it's also at the same time like optimistic to see, because you got a bunch of guys that see the vision and realize that the vision isn't going to get handed to you. And in the NFL, I think a lot of guys think that the vision is handed to you, and that was changed. I did like how pretty much nobody had anything negative to say about anybody else, which was nice, or the team, or like you said, it was like the last day of school. Like it was like we did this together. You kind of saw the camaraderie of the Pittsburgh Steelers in that moment, which was cool because, again, at a lot of times this season, it kind of felt like everything was falling apart and that, guys had to go and this attitude issue and this attitude issue. And to see it all come into a moment of, look, we're here and we believe we could do bigger things. That was cool. And I think people should be more optimistic about the future. Mine was yesterday was kind of put a cap on it. Deontay Johnson says after the game that he hopes Mason Rudolph returns in 2024 as the guy, gets the job. Jaylen Warren says yesterday that he expects Mason Rudolph to return and be the starter and that he did what he needed to do. I don't know if Jaylen understands in the moment or understood in the moment that Mason's contract is up, because I wouldn't be paying attention to other people's contracts if I was in the midst of a season. Like, I wouldn't have a board up there and be like, oh, all these guys are leaving.
Right.
But for him to say, I expect him to be the guy, it just feels like the locker room wants Mason to be their starting quarterback. Like, if the season started today, and I get that that's a big if, they'd look at it and say, like, they would just all expect Mason to be QB1 heading into next season. I think now it comes down to the coaches, which we talked about a lot yesterday, of maybe Mike Tomlin needs to start listening to guys more. I think it comes down to the coaches erasing the first-round draft stock and erasing the third-round draft stock vet that didn't make it at first, and just saying, what quarterback gives us the best opportunity? Who cares about how it looks in the end? And, whether or not I'm capable of drafting a first-round quarterback, and just look at it like, who gives us the best chance? And I think Mason Rudolph is that guy, and I think the locker room feels like, they're a bunch of guys. They're a group of guys. The locker room is a group of guys who do not care where you were drafted or how you got here. They just care about who's going to give us the best opportunity to win. I think if the coaching staff realizes that same thing, they'll listen and Mason will be the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think quarterback is a position that's uniquely, that makes kind of your teammates' opinions of you pretty relevant, more than who cares if an outside corner is a leader? Who cares if he has the respect in the locker room? Like, if you play well, you'll get that stuff. And quarterbacks a little bit like only to a certain extent like that. Like, you have to be charismatic and good with people and able to navigate problems and able to navigate, interpersonal disputes and relationships. And it seems like Mason's able to do that really well. Mason, I think, understands politics is kind of the only word that comes to mind, but kind of the human element of being a quarterback, at least by all accounts. And so in that vein, just like respect for the guy calling the plays and running the huddle is important. And Mason, you can talk all you want about what he done on the field, but at the very least, he's leading this team and he's got their respect, and his voice carries a lot of weight in that locker room.
Yep, exactly. And there are a lot of decisions to go through. We'll talk about all of them throughout the offseason. But for right now, again, if you sat everybody down in that thing, and this is no disrespect to Kenny, I don't think anybody took it as a jab to Kenny or Mason's better than Kenny. I think it was strict tunnel vision, Mason Rudolph. And they just realize how good this kid is and how promising their future is if he is their quarterback, which I thought was a big thing, a big way to walk away.
Yeah, and just like, not everything needs to be about Kenny,
No. Sometimes it could just be about Mason Rudolph.
Right. Like, just because we're not talking about one guy doesn't mean we're saying something about him,
Yep.
Like, I think we need to let go of that a little bit. Like you said, like, erase the first round grade, erase the third round grade. Just like look at the actual NFL football players we're talking about. And I don't know. Kenny Pickett I feel like has been a part of every conversation. Like, you literally cannot talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers without talking about Kenny Pickett. And I would like to be able to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers without talking about Kenny Pickett sometimes. I know he could be a part of their future. He's a part of their immediate future. But let's just, I don't know. I'm done with talking about Kenny Pickett, quite honestly.
Yeah, for right now, 100%, especially in the conversation of Mason Rudolph. Like,
right.
If Mason Rudolph doesn't come back, then obviously we're having Kenny Pickett conversations. But for right now, it's let's just talk about Mason Rudolph. I agree, and I think the players felt the same way. With that, that is the last time we will talk to these guys. We'll talk to Mike Tomlin, assumingly tomorrow. Have plenty of updates for that on Friday. We're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, check out all of our work at allsteelers.com and all of our pick coverage at insidethepanthers.com. We will be back on Friday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.